This weekend, starting January 24th, Latios and Latias are returning to raids in Pokemon Go. They're going to be hanging out with us until Monday, January 24th, so we do have a nice short 4-day weekend to raid up the Latios and Latias. I assume that their shiny variants will be available once again, so if you haven't gotten the shinies already and you want them, well, here's your chance. There hasn't been any new attacks announced, so no Mist Ball, no Luster Purge, which is kind of lame. But it is what it is. Latios, Latias can get the shiny, why not? In this video, I'm going to be going over the best counters to these raids, and I'll let you know the special level 41 best buddy specific breakpoints that now exist for these two raids. Before we get into that, if you are curious about their viability as psychic type attackers with the newly buffed Psychic, well, newly, it was buffed a couple months ago. Latios is number 5 in terms of DPS. Now, in all honesty, the Axis attack form doesn't exactly count. It's too much of a glass cannon to, even begin to work out, so erase this from your mind. And then Alakazam has to have the Legacy Psychic. So, technically, it's kind of like the number 3. And if you are into a Pokemon's overall goodness, so like their tankiness and their DPS, well, we do have the DPS to the 3rd power times TDO sort, which is a pretty good metric for that. And you can see that Latios is number 2. Now, in my personal opinion, if you don't have some special connection with Latios, I would avoid powering it up. Psychic and Psystrike Mewtwo are way better than Latios is by a lot. Psystrike by 4 DPS, which is huge. And if I take the best filter off, Psychic is by 3 DPS, which is also pretty huge. So Latios is definitely not the cheapest investment. Instead, I'd probably look to powering up Espeons instead. You can lucky trade the EVs and power them up pretty quickly there. And Metagross is also a pretty good Psychic type option. If you don't have the Meteor Mash on already, then go with the Psychic Metagrosses. But if you love Latios, or if you love having a variety of Pokemon, Latios is pretty awesome. And with that out of the way, let's get into the counters. So if you're not familiar with my graphs, the y-axis here is the Pokemon's DPS, damage per second. So how quickly you deal damage to the raid boss, the higher up they are, the faster they are. And then the x-axis is TDO, total damage output, basically the average percentage of damage your Pokemon will deal to the raid boss before they go down. You can also think of it as a lay metric for tankiness. So the more up and to the right your Pokemon is, the better it's going to be for this particular fight. I also have a duo DPS cutoff line, so if you are interested in doing the duo, this is a nice simple way to see if your Pokemon are up to snuff. Now, if you want more details on the duo for the Latios or the Latias raids, there are some detailed guides on GamePress in the description, so make sure to check those out. As far as the duo goes, without windy weather, you can only duo Solar Beam. And you can only duo Solar Beam with basically maxed out Rayquazas. So the other movesets aren't going to work out without windy weather, but Rayquaza is powerful enough to do it against the Solar Beam set. And you can also see here, we have our first winner, the Best Buddy Breakpoint. If you have a 15 attack IV Rayquaza, and you have it set as your buddy, and it is your best buddy, so it gets the CP boost from the best buddy, which is the effective 2 power-ups, right? It hits a breakpoint. It does 1 extra damage with its Dragon Tail, which allows it to gap over the plebeian, just basic level 40 Rayquazas. So your efforts are now being rewarded if you have a Best Buddy Rayquaza. Another Best Buddy Pokemon we have here is Haxorus, and out of all the Pokemon I looked at for the Latios raid, Haxorus is the only other one that's getting a Best Buddy Breakpoint. I highly doubt any of you watching this have a Haxorus already, let alone an Axew. I haven't even seen an Axew. And then have it as your best buddy, that's pretty insane. But I have to highlight this stuff so you guys know for the future. Now, if you are sitting back and you're going, wait, Best Buddy matters for raids? There's breakpoints for raids? Ryan Swag, which Pokemon do I walk? Which ones are the best ones to walk? I am working on a list of Pokemon that are going to be good and important for raids, so subscribe to SwagTips if you haven't already. I hope to have that video out next week, so expect it soon. So Rayquaza aside, going with any of the other dragons is probably going to be fine. I mean, Outrage Salamence, Draco Meteor Salamence, Dragonite, Garchomp, Palkia, all very good counters. You can see here that the Cloudy Weather boosted fairy types using their Charm and Dazzling Gleam sets are also really good options here. Very tanky, very powerful. Here you can see a level 39 that I put there. Yeah, Gardevoir with Cloudy Weather has a breakpoint at level 39.5, so this is the pre-breakpoint, basically letting you know what a not maxed out Gardevoir is going to perform likely with the Cloudy Weather here. So, but just as tanky as them, without a weather boost, we have the champion Dialga. Yeah, and just a moment here, if you haven't maxed out a Dialga already, definitely look to do it. We have a lucky friend, like a higher lucky friend proc rate event coming up soon, and if there's any Pokemon to get a lucky trade on to try to get like the 15 attack IV and a hundo if possible, then yeah, Dialga is definitely it. It's really good for raids as a generalist. You can see here, very powerful, very tanky, and beyond that, it's extremely good for rocket battles. You can throw Dialga at like just about any rocket battle and come out good. So Dialga is phenomenal for that. And Master League PvP, which is basically rocket battles if you think about it. But the Go Battle League is coming out soon, and the Go Battle League will have Stardust rewards. So even if you're not that into PvP, it might be worth your while to just be aware of PvP type stuff so you can benefit from the Go Battle League. So just a shout out from my boy Dialga here. I actually have Dialga as my best buddy already, just because Dialga's worth it. Dialga's worth it. It's that good. And yeah, if you want to use the Dialga for this raid, you don't even have to max it out. Level 38.5 is the breakpoint, and I think that's a perfectly fine cutoff for Dialga. As far as other featured Pokemon go, I have the Shadow Ball Darkrai. If you're curious about the Dark Pulse Darkrai, it's like ever so slightly worse. Like the Trozees I use for this overlapped a bit too much. The Shadow Ball is the better one, but if you have Dark Pulse, it's fine. Then here we have the Snarl plus Avalanche Weavile, which is the best Weavile for these types of raids. If you are curious about the Double Dark Weavile, it's on the level of like Mamoswine and Honchkrow here. So if you do have a Weavile, you want to use it for this raid, you want to use it to its optimal power, then Snarl Avalanche is the way to go. And I think for rocket battles too, Snarl Avalanche is also the like premium set. So yeah, I'd probably do that. Maybe even 2-move a Weavile, so then you can go Double Dark for psychic type raids, and then when these types of raids come up, you can just be ready for Snarl Avalanche. And then because everybody always asks about bug type Pokemon for these raids, I simmed a Rainy Weather Scizor, and yeah, not that hot. It's not bad, right? But we certainly have other options to use, and this is in the rain, by the way. So if you don't have the Rainy Weather boost, then it's like not even on the graph. Its performance is that bad. So now up and over here, you can see that we have Shadow Claw or Lick Gengar with the lead. So Glass Cannon type Pokemon every now and then can have this like peak lead DPS against certain raids. Basically the circumstances of the very beginning of the fight, the raid boss having, no energy and they have to wind up to their charge moves, and basically the mechanics of how a raid boss chooses to use charge moves. That situation can allow these Pokemon to get like extra damage than they would at any other point in the raid. So yeah, both Shadow Claw and Lick Gengar have a peak lead DPS advantage. However, if Gengar is not in the lead slot, they're both equivalent once again, but down and over here. So I'd say unless you're desperate for counters, you might want to give your Gengar a pass here. Another thing here to note is that this is the Shadow Ball Mewtwo. If you're curious about the Ice Beam Mewtwo would be about where like damage is on total damage output here. So definitely not that hot. It's not terrible, I guess. Like, if you're lacking better options, it's definitely an option if you already have it maxed out. But I think Ice Beam Mewtwo, it's going to be seeing some hard days now that Mamoswine and Weavile exist. Just saying. Oh yeah, and if you're curious about your ability to Trio, Trio DPS is roughly 18, so everything featured here should be available for the Trio. And then I didn't mention the breakpoints on Rayquaza and Salamence. You can see they got the level 34.5, the level 37.5 breakpoints. And then you'll see I have an asterisk here for level 30. Their next breakpoints were like super low, like low 20s, right? And they were kind of like off the graph. So I decided to just sim out their level 30 iterations to give you a working idea of how a budgetly powered up Rayquaza and Salamence would work out here. So level 30, this is where they're hanging out. definitely not bad if you are working on a budget. Next up to bat, we have the Latias Raid. So the shape of the Latias Raid is a little bit different, like same counters, but a little bit rearranged here. And that's because Latias is a more tanky Pokemon with a lower attack stat. So things are able to last a bit longer in this fight and show off more of their damage, which is definitely a plus. Another change with this graph is that I have the double relobby avoid TDO. So if you're curious about how this tankiness can benefit you, well, here's a rough idea of how that can help you avoid having to relobby a second time if you're playing with 3 people. Now, if you're playing with 6 or more people, then presumably this would allow you to prevent relobbying in the first place, and so on. Basically, you just take 100, divide it by 6, and then divide that by the amount of players, and that's where it falls on this line here. And the duo is impossible without windy weather. Theoretical duo DPS is 25. Actual duo DPS ends up being around like 27, and this graph cuts off at 24. So ain't nothing making it here. The dragons can make it with a windy weather boost. If you want specific details on that, link in the description to the GamePress guide. And with that out of the way, let's get into the counters. Guess what, guys? Same counters, right? But there are some slight differences. For one, Rayquaza is not getting a special best buddy breakpoint happening here. And cool news for those thrifting with the plebeian Rayquazas, right? Level 39 is equivalent to level 40. So if you have a maxed out 13 attack IV Rayquaza, well, hey, guess what? In this fight, it's as good as a level 40 Rayquaza, which is pretty awesome. Now, if you do have the best buddy Rayquaza and you're like, oh man, I wish I got something cool for this fight too, there are some specific bulk points. Like I think there's 2 movesets out of like the, 8, 12 different moveset combinations this thing can have. There's 2 of them where you're able to survive a little bit longer if you're at level 41. So you do get a little bit of a bump there. But when I simmed it out, like on average, using all the different movesets, it didn't really change that much. So Rayquaza gets something, but, Rayquaza can't get everything, you know what I'm saying? Here we can see that the only best buddy breakpoint we're finding is with Palkia. I have no idea who has a best buddy Palkia. If you have a best buddy Palkia, comment below and, link to a photo of it as your best buddy, because I don't believe you that you best buddied Palkia. Who best buddies Palkia? That's what I want to know. But it does get a best buddy breakpoint, so justice for Palkia, it's here. With the best buddy breakpoint, it's basically as good as Outrage Salamence is, so good job, Palkia, I guess. And yeah, the weather boosted Charmers here, definitely rocking it out again, and you can see that the Dialga here, once again, being a boss. Except this time, Dialga has a level 39.5 breakpoint, so here we have the pre-breakpoint, the level 39 Dialga. So, yeah, Dialga, definitely recommend powering one up, especially if it's got, good IVs. So try to get a lucky trade on that if you can over the lucky event. It's definitely a worthwhile Pokemon to max out, for sure. Here you can see the difference between Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse on the Darkrai. It's a more notable difference in this particular fight. The reason why is because Latias has a lower attack stat, so it drags the fight out more, and Shadow Ball is definitely an attack that benefits more from a longer fight than Dark Pulse. And then once again, Snarl and Avalanche, better than Snarl and Foul Play, so if you do have that swag, there is that swag. And if you are curious about the Bug-type Pokemon, there is Rainy Weather Boosted Caesar, once again, being as good as a lower level 20 Dialga. I don't know why I didn't put the breakpoint there, that's my bad, but you can check out the breakpoint calculator on GamePress, really simple to use, link in the description to that as well, if you want to know what this mystery number is. And for those of you that are curious about your Gengars, the Shadow Claw Gengar is the better Gengar in the Latias fight. Once again, both Gengars aren't as impressive as everything else. And if your Shadow Claw Gengar is deficient in IVs, or you don't have it maxed out, well, it has a breakpoint at level 39.5, so if you're anything below that, then you're going to be as good as a Lick Gengar. So Lick and Shadow Claw at level 39, they're basically the same. But level 39.5, that's where the swag comes in for Shadow Claw. And against the Latias fight, there is no special peak lead DPS for Gengar, so sorry Gengar, you're just good all the time. If you think about this related to the other graph I just showed you, they're basically swagging all the time instead of a little bit of the time. So good job, Gengar. You think they lost something, but they actually gained. Also, here is the trio DPS cutoff line. Yeah, 18 DPS, roughly the amount you need to do the trio. So if you are kind of drifting, a little bit too close to the ground here, you might not be able to achieve the trio. Of course, if you are swagging on the back of a dragon, you're probably going to get the trio in. And there you have it, the best counters to Latios and Latias with the new mechanics in the game. If you have any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, maybe you want the SwagTips premium list of level 41 best buddy breakpoint Pokemon for raids. Well, yeah, subscribe, man. What are you waiting for? Forgot to address this before. This is the average of all of the movesets put together. Of course, Latios, Latias, they have dragon-type movesets, so you're thinking like, oh, if it uses those, then the dragon types are bad. Well, Latios is using Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is so weak that it actually makes the dragons do damage faster rather than cutting them off and preventing them from doing damage. And in terms of Latias, similar deal. So weak that it kind of helps the dragons more than it hurts the dragons. Of course, if you are concerned about the dragon-type movesets, well then, the charm users, the fairy types, definitely really good. And if it's cloudy outside, well then they're even better.